Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Today I'm going to talk about a couple of different things, including a UFO sighting over an airport in India, which caused officials there to send up some fighter jets to investigate. But by the time they got there, the UFO was gone. But apparently, it hovered there in the sky for well over an hour, and there is some video evidence to go along with it. And also, David Grusch was on Joe Rogan podcast in an episode today, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. It was a very good episode. It was almost 3 hours long. I will leave the link for it for those who are interested in listening to that. But it was a very interesting interview, to say the least. But anyway, starting in India with the UFO sighting on Sunday. Here's an article from The Independent. India scrambles fighter jets to investigate UFO sighting as airport halts flights. So they actually shut down all flights until they figured out what this object was. They never did. Spoiler alert. Anyway, here's what the article says. India's Air Force scrambled 2 fighter jets on Sunday to investigate the sighting of a UFO near an airport. An alert was issued by security forces after the UFO sighting was reported from the northeastern state of Manipur at about 2:30 p.m. local time. The Indian Air Force, or IAF, also halted flight operations at state capital Imphaal's international airport for several hours. The object was visible with bare eyes, an unnamed official from one of India's federal police agencies reportedly said. Well, there is a video that's been floating around. It's not been verified as that it was actually taken at this airport, but it does show a people standing outside of a building that looks like an airport, and above whoever filmed it focuses in on this circular object just floating up there in the sky, just hovering. And apparently that was the object that the jets went after to investigate, but by the time they got there, it was gone. Here's what the article says. IAF activated its air defense response mechanism based on visual inputs from Imphaal Airport, said a post on Twitter X by the IAF. The small object was not seen thereafter. Indian authorities have not revealed specific details of their investigation of the UFO sighting. Well, let me just say this. If it's extraterrestrial, we'll never hear anything more about this because they have powers beyond anything that we have. So if it is an extraterrestrial craft, which it could very well be, checking us out, studying us, observing us, whatever, scrutinizing us, making plans against us, maybe, who knows what they're up to, but they are seen over airports sometimes. I remember the Chicago O'Hare Airport incident from some years back. Who knows? But we're never going to probably learn anything more other than what we know here in this article. Continuing, it says a video on social media showed a small white dot on the skyline near the airport. The Independent could not verify the authenticity of the video. Now, this video has been getting shown all over the internet. It's on Twitter X. It's on Reddit. And there's actually another video that I've seen that pretty much shows the same thing. But you really can't see anything. It just looks like a round light in the sky. Anyway, continuing with this article, it says Rafale fighter jets were dispatched to investigate the object from the Hashimara Air Base in the eastern state of West Bengal. Soon after information about the UFO near the Imphaal airport was received, a Rafale fighter aircraft from a nearby air base was scrambled to go and search for the UFO, a defense official was quoted as saying by news agency ANI. The jet returned and another one was later sent to investigate. Reports said the second fighter jet also returned without finding any evidence of a UFO. And these fighter jets, according to the article, they were equipped with advanced sensors and carried out low-level flying over the suspected area near the airport, but didn't find anything suspicious. Let me just stop right there. That's because if it was extraterrestrial, the thing took off and there was nothing anybody could do about it because we don't have the kind of technology that these visitors have. Anyway, continuing. It says here, the UFO was visible with bare eyes moving westward of the airfield at the Imphaal airport till 4 p.m., and an official from India's Central Industrial Security Force was quoted as saying by news agency PTI. Investigation operations took several hours, and flights at the Imphaal airport resumed operations only after 5:30 p.m. on Sunday, after authorities received clearance from the IAF. 2 flights were diverted from the airport and 3 departing flights were delayed before operations were allowed to resume. Let me tell you, one of the worst enemies of airports and the airline industry is UFOs. They hate these kind of stories. They wish they didn't. That they would like to cover them up because there's always going to be a concern if there's a UFO floating over an airport. Then maybe some people might have second thoughts about taking any flights out of it. But guess what? We're never. I am almost certain, 100% certain, almost not quite. Can never be 100%, but I'm almost 100% certain that they'll never get to the bottom of it. They'll never figure out what this was, and life will just move on. But hey, it could be extraterrestrial. I don't know. It doesn't look like a balloon to me. I don't think a drone's going to be able to hang out up there in the sky for that period of time. But hey, what do I know? Anyway, moving on. Whistleblower David Grusch, the former Air Force official who testified earlier this year in a House committee about what he knows about reverse engineering. And, well, he knows that there's a reverse engineering and crash retrieval programs, but he was limited in what he could say publicly about it. But he was on Joe Rogan, and it was a very interesting interview, to say the least. I watched this interview. It was almost 3 hours long. It was very entertaining, and there will be a link so you can check it out for yourself. But there is a user on Reddit who has detailed some of the things that, at least the beginning parts of this, the early parts of this podcast. He had some bullet points here that he put together on Reddit, which basically talks about what Grusch was talking about during this podcast. And he discussed the 300-foot triangle. This was from user Gambit6X. Grusch discussed a 300-foot triangle following a TS-SCI cleared DOD professional all the way to a secured facility at dawn. The triangle was dark, had a purplish glow to it. Plasma, he said, and distinct lights. The triangle was around 1,000 feet above the person's car, and it caused some kind of radiation damage to the person's paint. The affected person did not disclose this event for 5 years. So somebody was driving their car to a top secret location, and he was followed by some 300-foot triangle. That sounds ridiculous, but this is the kind of stuff that David Grusch was learning behind the scenes. He also discussed how he got access to a lot of information via a highly ranked official with impeccable credentials that told him he needed to know that there are already efforts to reverse engineer not of this earth materials. And because David was part of the UAP task force, it was imperative that he knew. When he finally got in touch with the gatekeepers pretty much told him to blank off and close their doors. This resulted in David conducting more research, documenting anecdotes and testimonials, and submitting them to the Inspector General. He also provided 12 hours of testimony to the congressional staffers and the lawyers to both the House and the Senate. He went full open kimono, as he says, within the time that was given to him. And yeah, he was also talking about the 1933 Italian case, of course, which is I find very interesting. When he was talking about that, he was saying it was like two plates. It was on top of each other like a lenticular shaped object, and it crashed and it busted open. There was no bodies were found inside of it, and the Italian government was sitting on this for a long time, until 1944 or 1945, until the American government came in and took it back home for themselves to check out. But on here it says he mentioned the 1933 case where the Pope and the Vatican were involved, but says that earlier cases that he simply is not allowed to discuss at this point. So he did talk about there was actually cases before 1933, but he couldn't get into it. Yeah, and that was something that did happen in that podcast. He says there were no bodies recovered from the crash. The vehicle was lenticular but broke apart after impact, and there was only that traditional bell-shaped object left. Italian officials had contacted Nazis at that time to determine if there was some sort of German aviation experiment. And the Germans came to Italy. They took a look at the craft and said that it was definitely not theirs. The craft, according to Grusch, was 20 feet by 10 feet. And he also talked about how in 1944, 1945, the United States government took possession of the craft. Also, a lot of the findings across this 90-year program have led to innovations specific to the national security space, not necessarily a replication of the technology, but more of an inspiration resulting in human innovation. Now, this is something I've talked about before on this show. In fact, I'm sure I talked about it even yesterday. Or, it's if something's 100,000 years more advanced than any technology that we have here, we're not going to figure out how it's going to work. It's just not going to happen. It's like sending a solar calculator back in time and handing it off to like Socrates or something, and saying, "Hey, could you figure out how this works?" He's never going to figure it out. Nobody's going to figure it out from those times. Just like we're not going to figure out how these things work, but we will get inspiration from them. And I believe that's what it goes on with these reverse engineering programs. We get inspired by them, but I don't think we've cracked this nut yet. He also talked about that there was double-digit craft retrievals. He said Grusch knows of the specific number, but is not allowed to disclose it. The reason why is because our adversaries are watching. They're listening to everything we do or say, hence the discretion. So we got to be careful because they are reverse engineering stuff in rival countries as we speak, according to Grusch. He says that we have a congressional oversight issue because these programs have not been reporting to Congress as they should have in appropriate ways. Well, of course, obviously, they haven't been reporting to Congress for decades, for over 75 years. He talked about meeting with Harry Reid 2 years before the senator passed away. By then, Harry Reid was a civilian and not an elected official. He met with Harry to determine how much Harry knew. He was curious about the $21 million allocation that was for a previous program. Reid told him he knew we had UFO material, tried to get access and was denied by the Department of Defense, and this confirmed David's beliefs. Harry Reid told him, just like he told a New Yorker during an interview years ago, that Lockheed Martin is the government contractor that had UAP material. Lockheed Martin wanted to divest itself from such material onto a specific military base. CIA was involved. There was a lot of stuff where they're talking about different the involvement of Lockheed Martin. But what's interesting, he also talked about that Lockheed Martin is really not at issue here. Lockheed Martin complained about how compartmentalized this reverse engineering program is and how they are not able to bring in the necessary engineering talent to do their work. Grusch says that he talked about people that he's been close friends with for over his 14-year career that work in these reverse engineering programs, and they're frustrated because all the work is so highly compartmentalized that one engineer sitting right next to another engineer in another cubicle can't talk to each other about what they're doing. So it's very difficult to move any sort of discovery forward, apparently, because of this. David also shared that he was reviewing old ATIP documents. He found adversarial counterintelligence about the United States government that talked about America's reverse engineering program. He went on, David went to that agency that had acquired this adversarial intelligence and requested more on behalf of Congress. Initially, that agency said sure, but after a 2-month silence, they came back with a very aggressive attitude and pretty much told him to go blank himself and never come back to them asking about this stuff. Also, the United States is aware of other countries and their reverse engineering efforts, but David did not disclose who those nations are. He did say that it's not hard to guess who it is. It's China and Russia, for those who are wondering. I'll let you know. Don't worry. Continuing, David also talked about the Chuck Schumer amendment that is supposed to establish a disclosure process between 2024 and 2030. The Senate has approved it, but he's concerned about the House. The House is fighting. There's some people in the House like Mike Turner and Mike Rogers. They're blocking it. And I'm going to stop there for a second before we go on. I just want to point out, I did talk about Mike Turner before. These people are completely, absolutely corrupt. Mike Turner, of course, as we all know, Mike Turner is he's the chairman of the House Select Committee on Intelligence, while Mike Rogers, he's the chair of the House Armed Services Committee, and these two guys are apparently blocking it. And you know why they're blocking it? Like I've talked about before with Mike Turner, they're receiving lots of money over the years from the military-industrial complex. Let me just, I'm going through here. I'm looking on Open Secrets here and this is for Mike Turner in the 2021-2022 from political action committees from defense contractors, just from the last period from 2021 to 2022. Turner received $154,000, while Mike Rogers, according to Open Secrets, actually Mike Rogers from 2023 to 2024 received from the defense contracting companies $141,500, and in the previous 2022 to 2023 period, he received a lot more, I believe. Yes, from defense. Yes, $284,500. So these guys are completely corrupt. They'll do whatever the military-industrial complex wants them to do. So that's why they're blocking it, just so people understand what's going on there. But it was talked about on this podcast. He says Mike Turner is the one blocking it, and David mentions Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Mike Rogers is also trying to block this legislation in the House. So they're trying to prevent that Chuck Schumer amendment from passing in the House and thus being part of the 2024 National Defense Authorization Act. Because without that legislation, then these efforts that Schumer and others, a bipartisan effort in the Senate, wanted to see happen, as well as people in the House. There's other people in the House like Tim Burchett want this in there, but some of these guys are blocking it because. Again, you have to money speaks, money talks. That's the bottom line. Also, Grusch recognizes the support that he's received from Tim Burchett, which is the complete opposite of what he has received from Mike Turner and Mike Rogers. And he makes that pretty clear. He also mentions how Mike Turner has been considered the most corrupt elected official with Congress for a while, and he also mentions his top donors, which we already know who they are. Yes, like I talked about this, I actually did a podcast just specifically on Mike Turner before about where he gets his campaign contributions from. He gets big ones, folks. Also, Grusch says that we are not alone, and with 100% certainty, he's 100% certain that we are not alone. But that the old guard is trying to keep the truth away from the American people. He says that the toothpaste is already out of the tube, and it's simply too late in his opinion, for them to restrict the truth. And then also, Joe Rogan asked him what these non-human entities are, and Davis said that he believes that they're extraterrestrial per all of his sources. But the Schumer amendment used the non-human intelligence term to catch everything, which is a very smart thing to do. And now you know why they're using non-human intelligence in all these bills, because that covers extraterrestrial. Because like I talked about this before, you could say, well, it's not extraterrestrial. You could say somebody could say they captured some recovered craft and they know it's most likely extraterrestrial because there's beings in that craft, dead pilots that are obviously not human, and they obviously must have came from somewhere else. But they don't know. They could say, we don't know if they're extraterrestrial. Maybe they're from here. They could say that, and that's why you say non-human intelligence. So that was a smart thing that they started to do in Congress, which I'm very glad to see. But. This is something. I've talked about. I've been talking about some of this stuff for a long time now, and a lot of us are already there, right? A lot of us are already there. But some months. I guess it was last month, actually, in October, I had received an email from an anonymous source who I talk to on a regular basis. He sends emails sometimes to me. I've talked about this person before. He's a retired electronics engineer who did work for the government and different agencies like NASA, DARPA, the CIA, and also different defense contractors. And this guy knows that there's a cover-up. And he sent me a message talking about this, what's going on here, some of the issues with why we're not getting the answers from the Department of Defense like we would like we want, why they're able to get away with this. And this is what this person wrote to me. He says, I hear a lot of misinformation about the legality of special access programs, and I think it might be good to clear that issue up once and for all. In the U.S. Title 10 Code, which governs the military, Section 119 defines CSAPs, special access programs. And if you look at the attachment, he gave me an attachment, the area I boxed in red, congressional oversight, can be waived by the Secretary of Defense. He only has to brief the chairman and ranking members of the Armed Service and Appropriations Committees of the House and Senate. And he also sent me a second attachment that has the names of the people on these committees. But he talked about how people in the Pentagon could just, they don't have to tell people in Congress anything. If they deem something that's national security, then they don't have to say anything. But anyway, this is I'm going to pull up on the screen here so you can see what I'm talking about. This is this is the government regulations with regard to special access programs, what you're looking at right now. And it says here, the Secretary of Defense may waive any requirement under subsection A, B, or C that certain information be included in a report under that subsection if the Secretary determines that inclusion of that information in the report would adversely affect the national security. Any such waiver shall be made on a case-by-case basis. If the Secretary exercises the authority provided under paragraph 1, the Secretary shall provide the information described in that subsection with respect to the special access program concerned and the justification for the waiver, jointly to the chairman and ranking minority member of each of the defense committees. A special access program may not be initiated until 1. The defense committees are notified of the program, and 2. A period of 30 days elapses after such notification is received. And then in this section, it also says this. In this section, the term defense committees means the committees on armed services and appropriations of the Senate and House of Representatives, and the defense subcommittees of the committees on appropriations of the Senate and House of Representatives. So by looking at this language, I just want to point out here, basically they could, the Department of Defense doesn't have to share this information. They could just provide a simple briefing to people in Congress. They could deem something like recovered extraterrestrial craft as something that affects national security because they want to try to reverse engineer it, and they could put that blanket over it, and then basically by doing so, it keeps the extraterrestrial reality secret too. They'll lie about that too. They could keep it all secret. They could brief the Congress, but they don't have to give them all the details of something. If they deem something, things that are in special access programs like a reverse engineering program or a crash retrieval program, if they don't have to talk about this because the way the laws are established, they can get away with this they don't have to tell Congress this stuff. That's what it looks like to me. So I was glad that this was sent to me because it is something that we got to keep in mind, and this is how they've been getting away with it. Now, my argument is this. I believe that to me, we're talking about covering up nature. To me, it's almost like you're saying, okay, I understand if the United States government, a faction within the United States government recovers an extraterrestrial craft that has crashed and there's alien bodies in it, and because the Secretary of Defense could say, okay, you know what, I'm going to deem this or whoever, somebody in the top Pentagon officials, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, whoever, that they could deem it as, okay, this affects our national security. We need to study this and we need to try to determine how this thing works because we're going to use it for ourselves. So we're going to put it under this umbrella of national security and make it top secret. Nobody can know about this because we're going to try to reverse engineer this. And that's what I think they've been doing for all this time. They've been using this as an excuse for all these decades to keep it covered up, to keep it from the Congress, and to study it privately. See, my whole problem with this is it's like you're trying to cover up nature. I understand the reason to keep the reverse engineering program secret, right? And anything that they learned by reverse engineering recovered craft. I understand why that should be kept secret. That makes perfect sense to me. It should make sense to everybody, right? It's understandable. The part I don't understand is that you can't keep secret the reality that there's an extraterrestrial presence here, that there are beings from other planets coming to this planet and checking us out, observing us, studying us, manipulating us, whatever they're doing, it doesn't matter. The world deserves to know. The human race deserves to know, not just some elite group or elite groups throughout different world governments. We need to know the truth. The scientific community, most importantly, needs to know this. We need to know what's going on here. What is our place in the universe? And that aspect should never have been covered up. Okay, maybe when in the late 40s, early 50s, when we started realizing, when the government started realizing, wow, we got an issue here, right? I understand that part, but it's been too long. And have to play this game and talking about slow disclosure. People are ready for it. We're ready for it now. I'm not going to get into that again. I talked about that yesterday. there's no point in waiting anymore. That's the bottom line. And you just can't cover up nature. It's like pretending that sharks don't exist or that wasp nests are top secret, or that's what it's like. It's so stupid. The world deserves to know. The human race needs to know, not just some small group of people. This is too important to keep secret and to continue to keep secret for any longer. There's no reason to wait anymore. There's no reason for slow disclosure. We should be ripping the Band-Aid off all at once. People will be able to deal with this. I completely believe that. Anyway, moving on, I want to talk about the Spotify poll that I ran with my most recent episode. Carl Nell's disclosure slide presentation / ET reality shock and awe disclosure proposal. Now, in that episode, I presented a disclosure proposal where we just what I called shock and awe UFO disclosure project, where I say just all the whistleblowers get together in one room, live stream everything that they know, put it all on the internet, put it on a website, let everybody know the truth all at once. And I asked this question. Does the Extraterrestrial Reality Shock and Awe UFO Disclosure Project have a snowball's chance in hell? I have 45 votes so far. 17 people, or 37.8%, say yes, while 28 people, or 62.2%, say no. Unfortunately, I thank you everyone for the yeses, but as we all know, I have to agree with the no's. There's absolutely no way in hell, and a snowball's chance in hell at that the government would ever do something like that. They're just not going to do it. They think the human race is a bunch of complete absolute morons. They think that they're superior to you and to everyone else, and they think that while they can handle it, they don't believe you could handle it. So they have to do it slow. They have to spoon feed it to you because you're too stupid. That's what they think. I just wanted to point that out. So it's definitely no. I agree with the majority on this. Let's see. I did receive some comments on there on that episode as well. Somebody actually said, "Hey, I'm surprised you didn't have a heart attack making this episode." Yeah, I was pretty wound up for that most recent episode. For anybody who's seen it, yes, it's lucky I didn't drop over with the heart attack. You're completely correct. That was from the world of their forgotten boy. Thank you for that comment. And also Fred said, "Love your passion, bro." This is from Spotify comments. "Love your passion, bro. Is our elected government being held hostage by a military cabal in the Pentagon? If the executive and legislative branch we elected are not in charge, who is running the show?" Well, obviously, we set up this whole situation where we're giving non-elected officials a little bit too much power, I think. I mean, this group of non-elected officials has been maintaining a cover-up of an extraterrestrial reality since who knows how long. I would say at least 75, 76 years, right? But that's what's going on. Yeah, we've given people too much power, obviously, unelected people. They have the power over us at this point in time. They think they're better than you. They think that they're smarter than you. They don't think that you could handle the truth. They believe that their brains, which are much more better designed than what the brain inside and you're creating them. So their brains are better, and they come from better pedigrees and all that kind of stuff. And they think they're better than you. So they keep the secret to themselves because they don't think you can handle it. That's basically the bottom line. And then moving over to YouTube, there was some comments over there as well. I want to check out a couple. This was from Dober Floof, says, "Roll it out, Quark Zone. Shock and awe UFO disclosure proposal. Get it done in December and move on. If only." Of course, right? There's no way it's going to happen. Of course, that poll was done with tongue in cheek and somewhat in jest, because it's never going to happen. They're never going to just rip the Band-Aid off. They're not going to go that route because, again, they think you're all stupid and you can't handle this, which I don't believe. I think that's total nonsense. And then somebody else was talking about here. This was from Dub Snapper, says, "The 12-year timeline is crazy talk. I can't see the logic in it. Unless they are aware of some pre-existing plan by the gatekeepers, which is largely out of the Sol Group's control." That was something that was being talked about over the weekend by at the Sol Foundation. The former Army Colonel Carl Nell had this proposal, had a slideshow where it was basically talking about an 11, 12-year slow disclosure plan. Now, I don't know. I'm not sure if that's what the people from the Saul Foundation, people who are pro-disclosure, are looking at, or and want to see happen, or if they believe that's how this is going to go down. I don't know. I don't know if they think that this is the way what the Pentagon's doing. I'm not sure about that. Let's see. I got a lot of comments from a lot of people. I want to say I really appreciate all the comments that people send to my channel, both on Spotify and YouTube. I very much appreciate it. Here's Bengal Brown says, the economy is not going to collapse if they say aliens are here. The public is so stupid they won't even ask about the propulsion. I agree with your religion points as well. Who cares? Many of them need to be shook to the core. Yes, people need to wake up into, we're just a violent culture. The human race itself is just, we're not. To me, I don't see a lot of positive change, really. If you look at what's going on today and you look at what was going on in the past, I mean, it's just the same old, but just different faces, different ways of doing it. I mean, we're still murderous monsters to each other. We're greedy, we're rotten. We need a wake-up call. The human race needs a wake-up call. And I believe pulling the Band-Aid off style would be that wake-up call. It would serve as that wake-up call. This was from TR6888. I'm with you 100%. The controlled disclosure ship has already sailed. If we have a mass sighting with thousands of videos in Chicago or New York in daylight, 2 weeks from now, the disclosure Band-Aid will be ripped off. It's time for the truth. Yes, that's another thing. That could happen. They did talk about that at the Saul Foundation. You don't want that to happen. I don't think you want disclosure to happen that way by a whole bunch of alien ships showing up Independence Day style and just hovering above major cities. You don't want to wait till that happens. You don't want another Phoenix Lights incident to happen, right? Because if it happens this time, if it happens now with the cell phones that we all have, it's game over. Then you might have a little bit of panic. You might disclosure might come with some panic then. But anyway, I want to say thank you all for the comments again. I truly appreciate it, and I'm going to close it up for now. I'm going to end this episode. So thank you all for joining me. Until next time.